Welcome to 4 Women, 4 Decades Life Lesson Conversations. In this series, we're talking to people around the world about the lessons they've learned that have helped them see life and its challenges from a new perspective. Today, I'm talking to Giles P Croft, and Giles is a psychology graduate and former NHS surgeon who stepped aside from clinical practice for a decade to explore a number of career paths, including health informatics, cycling journalism, public speaking, and high street retail with his wife. He's now back in the healing profession, tackling the root cause of chronic mental stress and its many harmful effects by helping clients reconnect to their natural inbuilt state of health. And he lives and works in the Brecon Beacons National Park with his wife and 6-year-old daughter. Welcome, Giles. It's lovely to have you with me.
Hello, and thanks for inviting me on. Honoured.
So it's a very bold statement, the one root cause of chronic mental stress.
Yeah, it's crackers, isn't it, to think that there's one cause, and of course with one cause comes one solution, which is nice. So for me, and just listening to you kind of like introduce these sessions, life lessons, things that we've learned along the way. I think that is the thing that I've learned, is just the fact that we've been going around in like a bit of a misunderstanding about how life works. There's just like there's a couple of like just really little things that seem like really subtle. But just like when you really follow them through, they just make such a massive difference to your life. The biggie being about how we actually experience life. What is actually going on in any moment. How are we experiencing life? And learning about that has just been absolutely just transformative in my life.
So that sounds amazing. And so can you kind of help share what you're really seeing differently about life and this understanding?
Yeah, well, I think, like, so for donkey's years, I was, I trained as a doctor, and then I got into personal development, and I got into that world of personal development of kind of like being the best version of myself that I possibly could. And I've got like bookshelves full of books, all telling me how important it is to be that best version of ourselves, and what hard work it is, really. There were precious few of those books have said, yeah, well, come on, relax, it's fine, there's nothing that you need to do, you've got to, because that doesn't really sell books, does it? so and we kind of we buy into it, and that's fair enough, because no one's told us any different at all. But I couldn't shake the feeling after reading a whole load of these different books that in a way they were all kind of pointing to the same thing. I couldn't shake that. It was like there was almost like this intangible aspect of ourselves that all these books were pointing to, and then going, therefore you need to do this and this and this and this to be okay. None of them actually, pointing to the intangible okayness within us, and then said, and stop, full stop. It's all there. There's nothing that you need to do. And I suppose my first ever exposure to this understanding that we talk about was reading the book Don't Sweat the Small Stuff by Richard Carlson, which I learned was number one in the New York Times bestseller list for something ridiculous like 200 weeks. Like, it spent years or 2 years. No, it was 2 years. That was it. It was 100 weeks. It was 2 years at number one. So that's, and to me that really kind of like sort of points to the normalness of this, the fact that what we're talking about is the human condition, is the way we work. And so everyone really liked that book because it's like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh that makes sense, doesn't it? That makes sense. Now when I read that book, it's it I always ended up putting it back on the shelf and moving on to something else, because it didn't give me anything to do. It didn't say, therefore you need to do this, 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 and this. And so I'd like, if I was feeling a bit fed up with all of the usual doing and the affirmations and the visualization and working on myself and this and that and the other, and I got fed up with that, I'd like, let's have a read of lovely Richard Carlson, and I'd read and I'd settle, I'd come back into balance just so that I could start working on myself again. I mean, it's crackers when you think about it. It really is.
I so relate to that. I mean, I, just have an extensive library of all, of all those same sort of books. Like, so just talking about the self-help books and personal development books, and just working on that better self, that vision of striving to iron out the cracks and find the next strategies to do things, and the discovery to see that there's an easier way. Didn't have to do that.
I mean, there's a clue in both of those titles, isn't there? Self-help and personal development. Yeah. And when when it really comes to it, it's like, well, this self that we're helping and this person that we're developing, is that something that's really tangible, or is it just like an idea of how we should be, that's kind of like held in place by all of the messages that we get from the newspapers and from the way we've been brought up and everything like that, and really it's a questioning the stability of that, really, that's certainly where I found freedom from it all.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear you say a bit more about that, because once again, another bold statements there. But yeah, so I mean, for anyone listening to this, they might ask some pretty big questions about, well, what do you mean self-development and personal development isn't possibly the best direction to look in, and what do you mean freedom? So yeah, say a bit more.
It's I suppose it's freedom from the narrative that's going on all the time, because I'll be honest, I hadn't really noticed that was even a thing, because again, nobody had told me, nobody had pointed me towards it, nobody had, you'll see a comedian or something, and they'll make a joke about, or I was having a chat with myself in my head, and I'll go, what, only me, and the whole audience laughs, because it's, I mean, obvious that we've all got this little chatterbox in our minds. So, and we take it for granted. We take it for granted as something that's actually us, for a start, because it kind of has our voice, doesn't it? Which is a bit inconvenient. Doesn't help. And we listen to it, and it's providing this narrative all the time. It's trying to make sense of the world. It's trying to make sense of everything that's happening moment to moment. It's like, oh, well, that fits into that category, and that and that relates to something that I've learned, and oh yeah, and oh no, and I agree with that, and at the end of the day, it's just a load of chatter that's going on in our heads. And so I hadn't really appreciated, until I started looking in this direction, that just how much my life was being ruled by that, just how much attention I was paying to it, and just how much noise it was creating, and how much energy it takes. I think how much energy it takes. There's a lot of mental energy that goes into having that dialogue with ourselves, because it it really looks helpful. It looks like if we're not having that dialogue, that we're going to fall apart, well, I've got to hold on to that, and I've got to hold on to that, and I've got to hold on to the other. Otherwise, otherwise what? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And this is that whole piece about our health and our happiness and our well-being, just being this thing that's always there, that is completely unchanging, that is constant, that sits beneath all of that chatter. And if you don't know that, if nobody's pointed that out to you, then of course you're gonna live in the world of chatter, because it looks like that's what's keeping you safe. Whereas there's a much, much bigger, and I mean much bigger, expansive feeling of happiness and calm and peace and well-being that is who we really are, that sits underneath all of that, that we actually relax into when we let go of all of that chatter.
I love that. And when you really see that, seeing that deep okayness, then yeah, all that chatter just seems to make a little bit less sense to take as much notice.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And if you and just that one little insight means that when you stop taking it so seriously, it just naturally doesn't, it's not, it's not as loud. You just, it takes on a different characteristic. You realize it's not actually you. It's not actually who you are. It's just this like, it's like the DVD commentary track or something. It's like, well, I can't hear what the actors are saying because all I can hear is the blooming annoying DVD commentary. It's like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we were the 4 Women 4 Decades were on a call recently, and I was describing it as a really bad radio station that was just kind of on, and I didn't really realize I could turn the channel, and I thought I had to listen to it. Like someone said, well, we didn't turn the channel, and I said, well, I didn't realize I could. Or I didn't realize that I didn't have to pay attention to it. Just the constant noise. And as you say, it just was normal.
Yeah.
Felt normal.
Yeah.
And of course it is normal, but it's not our natural.
Yeah, it's normal, but not natural. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, and it has consequences. So that bold statement I make at the beginning about, the root cause of stress. Well, if we're walking around in that misunderstanding and we're believing our thoughts, we're believing that commentary, we're acting from a place where the thoughts are real, and that's where all of our decisions are coming from and everything. Well, and it also, it activates our fight flight, because we get scared of our thoughts, and so we enter this state of semi-permanent fight or flight, and that takes its toll. That takes its toll on the body. We're learning more and more as the years go by about the connection between mind and body, and just how many organ systems, it's pretty much every organ system is affected by being in fight or flight, because being in fight or flight's got a very specific purpose. It's to get away from the saber-toothed tiger, so like a whole load of maintenance things are shut down because you're in an acute situation where you're trying to survive. Well, it's not healthy being in that state all the time. And what I've seen is that when people are led to see that it's all the noise that's actually creating that fight or flight state, well, it's just, as soon as you stop taking it seriously, it just kind of like the stress dissipates. You see it for the illusion that it is, and you can relax and get on with your life, really.
Oh my word. Well, I have to say, you make it sound all very simple.
Well, it is. This is the thing is, and I think that is that not the number one reason why, you know, this understanding of how we work isn't everyone isn't aware of it. It's because it seems too simple. It seems too simple, but we've made life complicated. You know, life existed before personal development books or even the idea of personal development. It's life's been going long before we actually existed in this form. So, and life finds a way. Life, from what I can tell, it tends to thrive. You know,
Yeah.
and we're part of that.
Yeah, we're part of that. We're part of, we don't see that we're part of that thriving nature. Because I guess we see our separateness from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for anyone listening in and who will be asking the question, well, how do I listen less to this chatter, you know, this narrative? I get that it gets me down. Where do I start the journey on that? What would you say to them, Giles?
Well, you're here watching this webinar, and that's a start. And the way I've seen that change works in people, you see, the old model tells us that we need to work hard at this, that we need to try and change things, and this understanding is is completely different, because it's really when we're not trying, it's when we're more in the flow of normal life and we're not thinking about it, that we start to have insights about seeing how it actually works. I mean, for me, I had two colossal insights that changed my life. One of them happened under duress, when I was up on stage talking to an audience, giving a talk that I'd given dozens and dozens of time over a decade, and I'd been looking in this direction, and I'd been having some little insights about it, about this underlying well-being that we actually are. You know, it's the closest description we're ever going to get to what we are, is a well-being. And I really wanted to share that with people, and it just occurred to me that I had a room full of people in front of me, so I told them I wasn't going to tell them what I was scheduled to tell them about. Literally tore the script up on stage and said, actually, I've got something far more important, without having any plan about what, you know. It was like a completely spur of the moment thing. And going through that experience of the next hour, then being fine, of course I was, you know, my heart was racing, and there were times when I didn't know what to say, and so I was like, I'm just going to wait a moment, because I'm sure that the next thing to say will come along. And even though the you know, looking into that situation from the outside, it's like, that must have been terrifying. The reality was that, given that it was kind of like, it was almost me getting my own evidence for this. That's what that situation seems like in retrospect. I didn't know at the time. It just felt like the right thing to do. It's just like, right, listen to this.
Oh my God, I love that story.
Fine. Yeah, no, and I've never felt more calm in my life. You know, that's when I talk about I experienced my health in that moment. You know, that is the closest I've ever come to really experiencing my own health, because we think of health in terms of being well, not having symptoms, all this malarkey, whereas health really it's the capacity for healing that underlies all of that. That's what health is. That's something that doesn't go away ever. You know, if I break my leg, it might help to have the it set. Of course it's going to help. I was an orthopedic surgeon, so I should know this. It's going to help to have it set, but the actual healing, that's not done by the surgeon. That's done, and that's not done by me. That's not something that I have to actively get involved in. that's my health. So in that moment, in spite of all of the terrible, terrible circumstances that were going on, the fact that I just, let an audience of 100 people down, and not talking to them about what I said I was going to talk to them about, that looks like it should have been a bad situation. And yet I more clearly than I'd ever felt in my life, I knew that nothing could touch me. That nothing could touch that innate health. Nothing could touch that well-being. And the work that you and I do, this is what we do with clients, is we point them back to that, because nobody told us that it's there.
Oh, that is awesome. And I love the way you talk about health as well. I hadn't quite heard it described like that before, but that's beautiful. And I can really see, because you were just in the flow of your health.
Yeah.
And obviously hugely impactful for you. And I guess I'm curious to also ask, what was the impact on the people that you spoke to?
Yeah. Well, it's good because I almost had I got to do the talk 2 days running, because it's a conference that I always speak at. And on the first day I gave that talk, I was trying to kind of like combine my old material with the insights that I'd had, the new understanding. And I was so up in my head about, I was listening to the noise. Okay, it was like I could hear it. It was going, well, you're making a right balls up of this, aren't you, Giles? Well, look, it's, the people aren't paying attention. They're busy looking at their phones. And I was listening to it. And so, and when we're listening to it, like we're not there. We're not having a conversation with the people who are in the room with us. We're busy having a conversation with ourselves. And as soon as we let go of that, we come back into the present. So the first day, at the end of my talk, I always ask people if they want to sign up to my mailing list, if they want to learn more. And I think on that first day, it was dismal. A room full of about 85 people. And I think I got about 5-7 sign-ups or something. Well, the second day, there's no better way to have people on the edge of their seat to tell them that you've got no idea what's going to come out of your mouth next. They will, absolutely. And I could, the energy in that room was absolutely electric, because I wasn't speaking from here. I was speaking from the heart. I was absolutely speaking from the heart. And so I think there were something like 85 people in the room again, and 75 of them signed up to my mailing list. So it obviously had an impact. And for the rest of the day, because this was the first session of the morning in one of the breakout groups, and this was back in the day. Oh, do you remember when we used to have real conferences with real people? So this was in a conference hall, and I had people like literally queuing up to ask me questions for the whole of the rest of the day. So
that's phenomenal, Giles.
yeah.
And I love what you say about speaking from the heart, and that was felt.
Yeah.
You felt it, and it has a different feeling, has a different ripple effect.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to make it clear that this is nothing to do with me, and it's nothing to do with you. This is just, as far as I can tell, this is just how we're all put together. This is what it is to be human. So there's no difference between me and you, anyone else. It's that this is the way it works, but nobody's told us. Nobody's told us. So we're busy living in our little thought created bubble, our little reality, our little narrative. We're busy living in that instead of living our lives.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. You mentioned you had 2 big insights.
Yeah. The other one was Duplo related
I
with
wonder whether we've got time
my
to hear
daughter. Yeah,
Duplo
just
related.
very briefly, there's a like one of the pieces of the jigsaw that I found to be really helpful is seeing the connection between the way we feel and what we're thinking. And we so often we think that the way that we feel is determined by what's going on, is determined by circumstances, determined by the situation. And that's another insight that I've had, is that, you know, by reading around the topic a little bit, oh no, actually that's not true. That can't be true. Like neuroscientifically, that simply cannot be true. But it really looks like it is. It's like, you know, it really looks like it is. The pictures that we create in our head have to be real. You know, it's something that has evolved over you know, millennia. And it just happened in a little situation with my daughter where there was a situation that I thought was going to turn out in a particular way, and it didn't. And I had a whole bunch of feelings arose in that moment, and just again, not I wasn't thinking about, this was like as normal as life could possibly be. This was like the most normal parenting situation ever. And instead of in that moment, instead of going off into a whole bunch of stories about why didn't that situation turn out like I wanted it to, or just being completely reactive and yelling at her or trying to teach her a lesson or something, just totally out of the blue, unrequested, I just had the jaw-dropping moment of, oh, those feelings aren't coming from what's just happened with my daughter. Those feelings are coming, like 100% of those feelings are coming from my thought, from my thinking in this moment. And that, I mean, that was like, that literally had me there with my jaw dropped and like, oh, this is what they're talking about. Yeah. So, you know, when you said earlier, what should, you know, what should people do? Well, you know, honestly, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do, but stay in this conversation, keep looking in this direction, looking for the evidence in your own life, and it will come out of the blue. It will come out of the blue.
Yeah. And what you're saying there, you know, it's hugely seeing that realization that we're always living in the feeling of our thinking. And it's never about
Never.
the thing,
Zero.
the person, the problem, the issue. You know, it really feels like that. Absolutely. That feels real. So that's and stuff is happening out there. That is real. But your perception that you're living, bringing to life is all down to your thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, you know, seeing that could be really transformational for all relationships.
Yeah.
Because in those moments where we're really angry and really frustrated or whatever, there's just that moment when you know this, when you really see it to be true, it just you don't have to go to that reactive mode that you might have done before.
I think we're always doing what makes sense. There's no blame here, there's no judgment at all. Every single one of us is always doing what makes sense, given the thinking that looks real to us in that moment. And all this does is allows us to step back from that and just get a bit more curious about it, and not fall into the same patterns of reaction. And then of course, once you've seen it for yourself, then you start seeing it in other people, and that adds like another dimension to a relationship.
Well, absolutely. It's sometimes easier to see it in other people, isn't it? But yeah, I think I would concur with you in terms of just keep listening to these type of videos, and you know, hopefully you're hearing the seed of truth, even if you don't get everything. You know, there's a kernel of truth that you can hold on to and be curious about more. The more and more we see this, the you know, the more powerful it's certainly been in my life. You know, the richer the better it gets, I
Yeah,
suppose.
it
And
doesn't stop. There's no, I don't think there's really any end to it. It's not like, oh well, I've had that insight now. You know, that's it. No, it's like and just part of being human, I think, is like repeatedly falling for the illusion time and time again, which is brilliant news, because it means we get to fall out of the illusion repeatedly as well. And every time we do, we're like, oh yeah, the weight lifts off our shoulders, and it's like, oh man, I was taking that seriously, wasn't I?
oh, it's beautiful, and it's like, you know, how lovely to see the humor in it all, in our humanness.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Giles.
yeah. No, really a pleasure. I'm really glad we got to do this. It's
It's,
been too long since you and I connected, so
yeah.
lovely.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Thanks for telling us a little bit about your life and your discoveries. And that's the end of this episode. So I hope you've enjoyed our conversation. Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And this video is part of our 4 Women, 4 Decades Life Lesson Conversation series. And you can find lots more fantastic interviews from this series on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe so you can keep updated with what we post when we post new videos. Thank you very much for your attention. Till the next time. Bye-bye.